Hello, infinite, eternal, joyful consciousness. Thanks for dropping by. I got a really interesting comment. I shared that I had an epiphany that I was just, in essence, ready to really pursue the non-dual path. That I wanted 24/7 happiness, and that nothing else would really satisfy me. And here's the comment I got. Sweet, you experience the love and bliss of your being almost daily, so you know how to access, become aware of it. Satchitananda, you've touched. No, 2 out of 3. I don't know what that means. To I only 2 out of 3. And the presence, the attributes of reality and reality itself. The World War II submarine movie said it perfectly. Dive, dive, dive. And as an old friend said to me, Finch, don't think about it. Don't worry about it. Just blankety blank, do it. Just F-U apostrophe C-K-I-N-G, do it. It would seem there really isn't anything else that you need to understand, but rather just deepen what you have already found. So I really appreciate this person's enthusiasm and their wish to be helpful. And what you've just offered me is really bad spiritual advice. And in my case, actually deadly spiritual advice. So first, why it's bad, then we'll talk about why in my particular case, it's literally deadly. So why it's bad spiritual advice? Well, the founder of Advaita Vedanta, Adi Shankara, pointed out that before someone is qualified to practice self-inquiry, they need to have 10 qualities. I won't go through all of them. But I'll go through a couple. The first and foremost is discrimination, the capacity to discriminate between what is eternal and not eternal. Next, dispassion, meaning lack of attachment to anyone or anything. Number 3, control of the mind, also called one-pointedness of mind, meaning that your mind is not going every which way. So we're going to stop right there because the second one, dispassion, is going to disqualify most people. So what this means is anyone can practice self-inquiry. It's a free world. But according to the founder of this school, and Ramana Maharshi himself said very similar things, until you've met the pre-qualifications, self-inquiry will fail. It will give you a temporary high, and then the ego will come back. Why is that? Because self-inquiry doesn't take care of tamas and rajas guna. So the question is, if we already are the self, why are we not aware of that moment by moment? Advaita Vedanta says because there's 3 qualities of the mind that obscure the self: tamas, rajas, and sattva. Sattva doesn't obscure it so much, but even so, sattva can. So then all we need to do then is, well, not all, but the first step is to remove those obscurations and then practice self-inquiry. Self-inquiry will not eliminate tamas and rajas. That's why Ramana Maharshi, the first thing in the book he wrote, Upadesha Saram, told people to practice first karma yoga, then bhakti yoga, and then raja yoga. Karma yoga to get rid of tamas, bhakti yoga to balance raja, karma yoga to eliminate and balance tamas, bhakti yoga to balance and remove rajas, and then to practice I got so excited I lost my train of thought. And then to practice breath control and one-pointedness of mind, all that to just get you ready to practice self-inquiry. And so the problem is, in today's modern spiritual world, most teachers are not teaching the preparatory practices, just like you, brother. And again, I appreciate that you're trying to be helpful. And the thing is according to Ramana Maharshi, according to the founder, Adi Shankara, according to the Bhagavad Gita, in my case, what the advice you've offered me will lead me to spiritual failure. It also can lead to a cycle of addiction, because what happens if you practice self-inquiry, and I know this from direct experience, if you practice self-inquiry without having removed tamas and rajas, it becomes addictive because it doesn't eliminate tamas and rajas. It just kind of puts you above them temporarily, just like any other addiction. Like instead of dealing with your feelings, you just drink alcohol. Sure, temporarily it'll get rid of the feelings, but then the feelings come back, and then you need more alcohol, and so forth and so on. So, um, so that's a short version of why that's really bad advice. And again, I honor that you're trying to be helpful. And it's very common advice. And the satsang movement and the Neo-Advaita version of Advaita Vedanta that's just being preached and teached all around the world. And there's no real judgment of you. I used to do it. I used to go around telling everyone, just inquire. You are the self. Well, you are the self is true, but it's not helpful until someone's really ready to dive into that path. So why it's deadly in my case? Because I got myself very out of balance and excessive tamas and rajas. And when I just put my attention just on the self, it leads me down a very, very dark path to where I actually get suicidal. Because, as I said, it's an addictive. When done incorrectly, it's an addictive practice, and it leads to a state of dissociation. Whereas when done properly, it leads to a state of integration. So it's not my job to tell anyone whether to inquire or not, but I do see it as my job to point out what Ramana and Adi Shankara and the Bhagavad Gita said about preparing yourself first. If anyone wants to read more, I recommend Ramana Maharshi's Upadesha Saram, which is his only written instruction for the path. And he doesn't start with self-inquiry. He starts with preparatory practices. Or James Schwartz's The Essence of Enlightenment, which you can find free online. And yeah. So, with that said, the sort of the essence of what you're saying, not the specifics of committing myself to this path. Yes, 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 and my understanding is it's a little bit more systematic than my understanding based on what Adi Shankara wrote, based on the Bhagavad Gita, based on the true teachings of Ramana Maharshi. It's just a little more systematic than what you're presenting. And the thing is, one of the prerequisites to practice self-inquiry is to not look for happiness in the world. Ramana Maharshi said self-inquiry is for people who are utterly convinced that there's no happiness to be found in the world and who are sick of samsara. If you don't have that attitude, and this is the other reason why it was so harmful for me to really dive deeply into self-inquiry. See, the thing is, self-inquiry is not like something you do for 15 minutes. It's something you do non-stop all day long. You wouldn't advise someone to go run a marathon until they were properly trained. Same, until someone was ripe to give themselves fully to the practice of self-inquiry, it's not a good idea. It's actually really dangerous. And yeah, it took me to the brink of suicide. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope it saves some other people some time. I went to a Neo-Advaita teacher for like 15 years before I finally figured out, and he would just tell me to inquire, and he'd tell everyone to inquire until I finally figured out, wait, Ramana says there's things to do before inquiry, as did Adi Shankara, as did the Gita. So my hope is just to save some time and to save some lives. A friend of mine had a psychotic break through, a friend of mine had a total mental breakdown, and his brother had a psychotic break through bad Neo-Advaita teaching. So it's my hope to save people some time and to save some lives. Thanks so much for dropping by. Take care. Much love.